Hello, my name is Jason Ruud. I am the Director of User Experience and Application Innovation at Hitachi Solutions North America. I live in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois, and you're listening to the Dallas Design Sprints podcast.
Let's start with discovery and how it relates to product strategy. Give me an idea of the kind of work you do in this space.
Right now, with Hitachi Solutions, one of my primary responsibilities is really helping companies get over that where to begin hump. Just getting started in the discovery space, really collecting requirements, collecting information to be able to make sure that the project starts off on the right foot. And I think so many times companies come into an engagement, especially with a consultancy firm, with an idea of what they want to actually build from a solutions perspective. It's my responsibility to come in and listen to that, but also pump the brakes a little bit. I think a lot of companies, based on my experience from a product strategy perspective, get a little bit over their skis. They automatically come into it with an idea of what they want to build, and they don't really think about why they want to build it, what business objectives they're going to see, what does success look like, what levers on the business side are they hoping to pull, and then who's affected by all of these decisions, what is going to be their path forward, what challenges are they experiencing today. I come into these engagements wanting to really build empathy for their business, what they do, what their current state is, who's affected both on the customers on their customer side, but both internally. We can then offer our product suite, and it very well might be the solution that they originally intended. But without really understanding all of that stuff, it's really hard for us to make really good recommendations. And oftentimes when that does happen, I think you're setting yourself up for possible failure in the future because you're not taking into account all of the decision points on what you're going to build. And then ultimately that affects scalability down the road, affects potential risks that you are going to encounter that you don't know today. It extends product life cycles. It has a lot of downstream impacts. So I think by doing that up front in the discovery phase of a project, you can really alleviate a lot of downstream problems.
How long does it usually take to execute on product strategy?
It really all depends on the business and the size of the business. From a strategic perspective, we really want to come in and understand what the market looks like for that business. What are some of the gaps in that business that maybe competitors are doing today that they're not currently doing, or maybe they are doing it and they're just not doing it well. Really understanding what that landscape looks like so that we can offer a long-term engagement solution and start discovery in each one of those gap areas. That initial analysis, we do a lot of scoping exercises to really understand really at a high level what some of those gaps are. And then strategically, we can come back and say, well, let's start here because this seems like it's going to have the biggest impact to your business, the biggest immediate impact. And then we will typically go through our design sprint process or some variation thereof to try and help discover it. So to answer your question directly, it really depends. It could be short as just a week or two or a much longer discussion. It really just depends on the size of the enterprise that we're working with and the amount of problems that they have to solve from a high level business perspective.
We take Microsoft as an example because you mentioned offline that you're currently doing work with them.
Mhm.
How is their focus on the business aligned with product strategy or what they're attempting to do with you?
That's a really great question. Working with Microsoft has been great. It also has some really interesting challenges. From Microsoft perspective, they have a great product suite that we build for. We do Azure services, cloud enablement, and that is, doing custom app design. We do IoT tech. We do data and analytics. So Power BI is typically our Microsoft product by which we build against. We do CE and F&O engagements. So we use Dynamics 365 to be able to do those things. And also when there might be like an internal app, we have low code, no code options like the Power Platform and Power Apps. So there's lots of different Microsoft products. And so when we're working with Microsoft directly and we are working on a client where we're partnered with Microsoft to achieve a specific goal, a lot of times up front, that solution is going to be presented. If it's a sales life cycle, right, it might be some type of CE engagement in which we're going to use Dynamics 365, which poses a lot of interesting challenges from a discovery perspective because you really have to balance that empathy that you want to gain for the customer, really understand their business challenge, but know that there's going to be specific constraints that are going to be brought on by the solution. And it's really working with Microsoft to really marry those things together so that we can maximize the solution that we build for our clients and making sure that they're on the right solution and the solution's achieving the right amount of goals, the right amount of objectives at the right time throughout the course of the implementation. It poses some interesting challenges, especially from a UX professional who is really hyper focused on the user and the business challenges from a product design perspective. But knowing that solution and what its capabilities are can be really powerful add to that. And that's where we really work with Microsoft.
How do you typically bridge the discussion about user experience and business needs?
We have a graphic that has been out there forever, which tells such a great story of the difference between UX and UI, or business needs and what the user does. And it's really marrying those things together, right? So from a UX perspective, we have this graphic that we show of, I'm sure you've probably seen it at some point in time, where you have that well-worn dirt path down the middle of the courtyard, and there's this beautifully architected walkway that's going right around that area that that person is walking in, and they're just walking straight through it. A lot of times I think of business needs and user needs, or user experience, and a lot in that regard. We have to make sure that we're listening to those user needs, and then the UX that we execute is actually achieving a specific business goal. We want to make sure that the UX that we're deploying, that we're building out, has specific data points from a success metrics, right, from the business side, that we are hoping to achieve. We will build those out, and that's why we love the design sprint process, because it allows us, give us a chance to actually validate some of those business needs through rapid experimentation.
You were referring to desire lines before. I think it's a principle of user experience is that people are trying to seek the easiest, most efficient path to get what they want. And
Right.
having that kind of dirt path in relation to a very well crafted cement-like path in terms of where things go, it's very similar to that.
Yeah, you have business needs that may be that well-crafted path, and it could be also substituted for UI design. You can have a beautiful UI design that does all the things that you think it should do, but users are going to take the path of least resistance, right? They're going to do what's easiest for them. And I think it's really understanding and marrying those things together that is the secret sauce.
Let's jump to UX leadership and what
Sure.
that means in the greater scheme of product design, product strategy, and basically leading people on the concept of user experience. What's been your philosophy or approach to user experience that seemed to work really well with a wide variety of different people?
I think that empathy is a big factor in leading people well. Having high emotional intelligence is another piece of that. It goes hand in hand. Those two things coupled together really drives just good leadership in general. The key is not allowing that, as Kim Scott would say in her book, Radical Candor, uh, to be ruinous empathy. As a UX leader, things that I've really learned over the years is to be a better active listener, to understand the folks that work for you and with you, their needs, and being able to meet them where they are, and being able to craft a plan for them that they can feel is tangible and achievable. I think that's really key. And I think there's a lot of similarities between user experience in general and just leadership, because I think it takes a lot of active listening, when we're talking to clients and we're talking to users of the software that we build, or of the experiences that we build. We are listening to their needs. We are making recommendations. We are thinking about how we want to construct the future for that person based on their needs. And I think it's very much the same thing with leadership. I think that what happens a lot of times in my experience is that leaders don't really take into account that these are human beings. These people have feelings and desires and goals to achieve in not only their career and their personal life. And I think that building that trust with them, knowing that you're in a partnership with them and that you want them to achieve, whether it's in your company or the next, I think goes a massive way in being able to have fully engaged UX professionals on your team that are going to go the extra mile for you and also be able to feel like they're achieving their ultimate goals within their career path. So that means having clear individual development plans for them, letting them know that there is a clear strategy for their career and where they want to take their career, and being very candid with them about where you think the gaps may be and helping them achieve and fill those gaps through either hard skills or soft skills or various competencies that they might need to achieve along the way. A lot of similarities. And I think that as we talk to users, again, it's much the same thing. We're really actively listening and having empathy for them. And it goes right along with leadership.
So do you think the term leadership is something that's given by other people rather than something that's declared by the position itself?
I think it's earned. I think that a lot of people, especially in middle management, are thrust into that position sometimes unwillingly. And heck, I was as well. And I did a lot of failing when I was initially thrust into management. I found to really enjoy it. I think it's one of the most fulfilling things that I do in my career. I just like to help people. I'm a people person. I really enjoy engaging in conversation with them and helping them achieve their goals. I have been a head football coach for 15 plus years, and there's a lot of similarities there in the fact that there's nothing better, nothing really brings me more joy than having a young kid who's just starting out in their football career and them being scared and apprehensive and not having a lot of skills in football itself, and then watching them mature, gain confidence, gain the critical skills that they need, and then at the end of the year, seeing that maturation process take place. And that's just a microcosm of leadership for me. Nothing makes me happier than watching somebody having some initial tough conversations with folks, being candid with them, and then watching them grow and watching them mature with that direction and seeing them actually become the person that they want to achieve. That is super important to me as a leader. That's really the only reason why I do what I do. Put everything else aside, that matters to me. Nothing makes me smile more than watching people achieve their goals in that regard.
It sounds like you're talking about servant leadership and showing UX
Very
leadership
much.
from the people that serve you and that you serve them. What if you were to look up and project on how UX leadership is defined by the people you answer to and by the greater organization? What does it mean to be a leader in UX in that regard?
As a UX leader, you need to be a great storyteller for those that you report to. And typically in higher positions of UX leadership, you're working hand in hand with product teams or you're embedded with product teams and you're telling a story. In everything that you do when going to actually deploy a new feature or a new app or whatever it is that you're doing, you need to sell that. It's a really internal sales initiative, and you need to do that with data. As user experience professionals, I think a lot of times we get very tied up in, well, we think it's the right thing to do because we're UX professionals, we know better, and we're making this recommendation. That never flies with senior leadership. It's always an issue, even in some of the organizations that I've been a part of where senior leadership completely understands the value of UX. They have a vision and strategy in their head that they want to execute. And it's our responsibility to be able to bring data to the table, say, we are doing this, we are executing in this way for these reasons, whether it be qualitative or quantitative. And it's even better if we can bring real users to the table and say, we validated with these people, and here are some quotes. Here are some of the things that they said, and this is the reason why we should be doing this. Now, at the end of the day, your senior leadership team may have other plans and may want to go move in a different direction, but I think you've served your users well if you can come to the table with some data and tell a compelling story about why we need to actually execute on whatever UX plan it is to achieve a specific goal.
You've had experience with scaling UX group or a UX department. So can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I think I've been really blessed. I've been blessed to come into 3 or 4 organizations now where the UX practice was very, very young and immature, and then be able to stick around with that practice to be able to help scale it out. It's been a really big blessing of mine, and I have seen a lot of things not to do and a lot of things that has worked well. And I use all that historical knowledge, obviously, in my next, whatever my next endeavor is, to make sure that I'm achieving our goals from a scalability perspective.
If you were going to scale UX practice for yourself or your organization or your
Oh,
department,
yeah.
what recommendations would you make?
First, try and understand the overall product strategy of the business and where you see it going. Obviously, working hand in hand with senior leadership in that, and really understanding that. Having some well-rounded product designers. I think that the early stage, especially, design is a huge factor in trying to get a UX organization off the ground. In my experience now at Hitachi, it's been somebody who can product design. If it's a product designer, great. If it's not, needs to be somebody closer to user research and somebody who can interact with a user, really ask the right questions in an unbiased, open, active listening way, be able to collect those data points that we're looking for to be able to tell those stories. So starting out with those folks, I think, is going to be really huge, especially if you're running, discovery sessions and whatnot. Somebody that's got a bit more of an architecture focus, someone or user research focus, who can really dig into the details, work well with others. I think those are some people that you really need to start building your foundation with. And then from there, as a UX leader, I think it's really important to have an understanding of the entire product development lifecycle for your business, and then understanding where UX can inject itself. A lot of times that's always, up front at the beginning of a project, but what happens during implementation phases and iteration phases? How are you going to inject validation and qualitative or quantitative learning into that to be able to inform your decisions, help your product teams move the ball forward? I think those are all really important factors of kind of having a really hard look at that, and then seeing where you can inject UX services along the way is a huge step in the right direction. Something I'm doing now today with Hitachi. Our team's rather young. We've got 5 individuals on our team, and we're looking to grow our practice across Hitachi Solutions North America. And I've identified some key opportunities that I think that we want to put our focus on, and that really help you understand where you need to build out your practice and grow it further.
I would imagine hiring is pretty tricky these days, just with COVID and the pandemic and everything,
Sure is.
that trying to find the right kind of talent for what you're looking to achieve within the company.
Yeah, it really is. You need people that are accountable, that are self-starters, that are independent, especially in a remote workforce where you've got to let folks be autonomous and be self-learning. Those are the soft skills that are really, really hard to pin down, especially in some interviews. I really love Patrick Lencioni's books on hiring, especially the ideal team player, where he has the trifecta of humble, hungry, and smart. I've really found that to be super accurate in judging talent. If you've read any of his books, the humble, hungry, smart, and the ideal team player is humble, being they have the humility to understand that they don't have all the answers, but they have the wherewithal to actually be hungry enough to be able to go get those answers, and be able to do that autonomously is huge. Smart really focuses on emotional intelligence. Do they have the emotional intelligence to be able to read a room, read the nonverbal cues of the person that they're speaking with, and knowing whether what they're saying is actually hitting the mark, or be good with people and be able to read people? A lot of people might not have that EQ, and they're bulls in a china shop. They come in and they're really driven and super hungry, and have some humility, but are just wrecking balls in an organization, right? Where you're constantly cleaning up after their messes. That trifecta I found to be really, really powerful when hiring folks, especially in a remote setting.
I heard the phrase hiring is guessing and firing is knowing.
Wow, that's pretty profound. I think that's pretty true. I think
Yeah.
that you know, I try and take you try and take as much guesswork as you can out of it. I've tried everything under the sun, from design challenges to taking people out of their comfort zone. As Patrick Lencioni says, take them out of the work setting and trying to get to know them as a person. You really start to learn about how a person is wired up
Yep.
and hopefully take some of that guesswork out of things.
You've been a staple in the Global Virtual Design Sprint. In fact, last time, I think in GVDS 4, you were nominated for Best of the Best in terms of fellow practitioners kind of voting you in as somebody they found extremely valuable. I'd like to ask you, as the organizer of the event, what would you expect to see in GVDS 6 if we're going to be doing this again in April?
I'll start with my biggest takeaways on why I love doing it. It's because, first, I get to meet so many incredibly smart people around the globe, and I think that's unique to GVDS. There's meetups and things like that, but the GVDS kind of motto of learn by doing really you get to know people on another level. And there's been such great people that I've interacted with throughout the GVDS process that I now talk to on through LinkedIn on a regular basis now, and follow and have learned so much from. I think that's been some of my biggest takeaways from GVDS. From GVDS 6, I think I still want to keep us moving towards the things that we build. How can we make them tangible? How can we realize them? There's a lot of really great sites out there where you help a nonprofit organization achieve some type of specific goal. And the closer I think that we can marry GVDS into practical application, I think the more it's going to grow. People, I think, learn a lot from creating, and I'll use a crude term, but vaporware essentially. But I think if we can actually apply that practically and be able to find some way to be able to implement the good work that we do, or at least get it out into the field into some type of practical environment, that's the skeleton key that can really unlock GVDS in the future. I think the learning stuff has really, really been great, and I keep coming back to it solely for that purpose. But I think that would be a huge, huge win.
So when are you going fishing next? I know you're a
Oh
hunting and a
goodness.
fishing guy. So what do you have planned? What do you got coming up? Are you going to plan anything for December in 2021? Anything coming up?
Well, I'm one of those weird people that, my wife included in this, but the rest of my family would love to, move to Arizona or Florida or something like that. We're cold-blooded. We we like to, uh, we want to move. We love moving north in the wintertime. So we bought a lake house in north central Wisconsin, and I love to ice fish. And so I'm sure I'll be doing some of that when the ice gets safe enough up there, and building a fire and sitting at my lake house and watching the snowfall and watching the eagles and the wolves. I can't imagine living without seasons. So I think going up there in the Northwoods in the winter, and the quietness and the beauty of wintertime up there is just a whole different experience. And I don't do well in the heat. So I'll be getting out there doing some ice fishing for sure during the winter time this year. Hopefully, it's a great social distancing thing to do.
So if the zombies start coming for you towards the lake house, you know that COVID's taken a very bad turn for the worst for
Right?
everyone.
Exactly. It's my bug out shack.
So when
Yeah.
you are logged in and tuned in, where can someone find your work or check you out online?
Well, you could check me out on LinkedIn under JRUUD. Love to connect with anybody. I post a lot, of course, on GVDS stuff in response to some of your posts, and post some of my own things. So I try and do as many posts as I can on LinkedIn. So I'm pretty heavy on there because I think there's a lot of really great content and people to follow. I do have the occasional blog post out on Hitachi Solutions, so people can come check that out. But yeah, in the Slack communities. So Nathan Curtis's design systems, research ops, let's see, product tribes, Andy Budd's design leadership. Try and stay active in all of those as much as I can. Sometimes I do a little bit of lurking, but I really do enjoy those communities. I think there's a wealth of information in them. Again, I'm a people person, so I enjoy interacting with everybody on those types of forums.
Well, thank you very much for the conversation, Jason. I hope you have a good rest of the week, and hope you enjoy the holidays coming up.
Thanks. You too. Enjoy the holidays as much as we possibly can during a pandemic, right?
Absolutely. Thanks for listening to the Dallas Design Sprints podcast. We're going to be starting up a community of practice in December, the first week of December. Our topics are going to be up November 15th. So if you're interested, look me up on LinkedIn. You just have to do a search for Robert and last name of Skrobe, or you can do a search for me on Google or look up Dallas Design Sprints. Either way, if you want to get involved with the Global Virtual Design Sprint community of practice, be sure to reach out to me and let me know. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.